Hi everyone, welcome back to the Thinking Crypto channel. I have a very special guest with me today, Christopher Gimmer, who's the CEO and co-founder of Snappa. And we're going to talk about Snappa's investment in Bitcoin. Chris, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to speak to you because we've seen the news outlets reporting on Snappa investing in Bitcoin. But before we go into that, can you tell us about yourself, your background, where are you from, where'd you grow up, and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Ottawa, Canada. Still live here. In terms of background, I actually have a more of a finance and accounting background. So I actually worked in the public sector coming out of high school, graduated university right at the height of the financial crisis. So like pretty bad timing there. And I was working as like a student in the government. So I just kind of ended up working there after school. And then after a few years, kind of got, let's say, tired of the kind of corporate style lifestyle, let's call it. And started getting a lot more interested in entrepreneurship and especially building businesses online, wanting a bit more freedom in my life. And I met Mark, who's my current co-founder for both Snappa and BitBo, and he was a programmer, and so from there we kind of became friends, and we just started launching a whole bunch of side projects and stuff, and eventually that led to Snappa, and so we both quit our jobs in the government and been full time on that since like 2015 now. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow. So when did you first discover Bitcoin and crypto? How did that come about?
So I first heard about it in 2017, and this was towards the later stage of the run up. And at the time, I didn't really do a lot of homework on it. So I bought some Bitcoin. I bought some Ethereum, and I might have even bought one or two other things. And it started running up, and obviously there was all the euphoria, whatever, and then it kind of just died off. And at the time, we were really focused on our business at the time. We were a couple of years in, so I didn't do the due diligence or the homework that I did, in 27 or like within the past year or two. And then so fast forward to 2019, a couple of years later, and our business was doing really well. We had a lot more cash flow, able to pay ourselves more money, and really started getting into investing beyond just like index funds, investing in individual companies or whatnot. And I have to give credit to Preston Pish because I'd been listening to his podcast for a while, and he was always that value investor, Warren Buffett type guy.
Sure.
And then when I heard Preston going on about Bitcoin, it's interesting because it was like if a hardcore value investor is into is Bitcoin, like I need to take a closer look. And some of the interviews that I'd listened to, it really made a lot more sense. And so that's when I started going down the rabbit hole and reading the Bitcoin Standard and almost like rewiring my brain and going down that journey. And so 2019 is when I really started to get a lot more into the Bitcoin space, buying a lot more personally. And so that's kind of how that happens.
Well, 2019, certainly a good time to get in because it was the height of the bear market. It's a good time to accumulate for sure. Before we go into, Snappa's allocation of cash reserves into Bitcoin, give the folks an overview of Snappa and the service you provide and the history of the company.
Yeah, so Snappa is a online graphic design tool. So essentially, it's our main users are typically small business owners, marketers within an SMB, and we allow them to create online graphics really quickly and easily. So if you need to create, a graphic to post on Instagram, or you need to create a graphic for a Facebook ad, our software makes it really easy to do that. We have a whole variety of templates. We integrate with a ton of free stock photos and graphics. So that's kind of Snappa in a nutshell.
Got it. So how did the idea between, and I'm sure you discussed it with your co-founder, Mark, to, hey, let's put some of our cash reserves into Bitcoin? Was it maybe you saw MicroStrategy, or you're like, hey, we need to preserve our wealth here, right? Or the value of the money we have in our cash holdings. Can you tell us a bit about the thought process there and how the decision came about?
Yeah, so like I said, in 2019, I started to get, a lot more conviction around Bitcoin on a personal level, and started putting, some of my money into it. But even at that time, it was more like, yeah, this is a neat idea. If this pays off, this could be a big thing. Let me put, at least a couple percent, of my net worth into this thing. And then the more I learned about it, and the more I went down the rabbit hole, it was almost like this thing is inevitable. My brain switched from there's a possibility that this could happen to I don't see how this cannot happen. And I started getting a much more conviction around the idea that at a bare minimum, I don't see how Bitcoin doesn't at least replace gold, or at least match gold's market cap and become a store of value. Whether it becomes the next global money and the global unit of account, that remains to be seen. But I was very convinced that at a bare minimum, we're going to get close to gold's market cap, and it performs the function of a store of value extremely well. So fast forward to March of 2020, and we were fortunate that Snappa's growth just took off post-COVID, which was kind of a surprise to us. And so next thing we're just bringing in a lot of cash flow, and we have all this cash on our balance sheet. And meanwhile, we're seeing QE infinity and stimulus checks going out and all this kind of stuff. And that's when it occurred to us, with interest rates at zero and stocks at all-time high and all this stuff going on, it was like we actually became very concerned with the cash that was sitting on our balance sheet. And we genuinely believed that Bitcoin was the solution to that problem, because we had worked really, really hard. Since 2012 is when we've kind of been trying all this stuff, and Snappa was the one that hit, and we were working really hard to grow that business. And it would have been, pretty devastating to see the purchasing power of all that cash and time that we've or all the effort that we've made to, for that to for the Fed or whichever central bank to just inflate that away, right?
Sure.
And so that was and so it was funny that I kind of came at Mark and saying, I've been doing a lot more research on Bitcoin and this and this and that, and I think we should actually consider it for the business. And he was also kind of doing a lot more research on the personal side too. So we both came together and we're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We need to protect, all of this hard work that we've done over the past few years.
Sure. And I know you probably can't give a number, but maybe a percentage, as far as your cash holdings, what percentage is allocated to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so we essentially wanted to get to about 50%. And our theory was, well, not theory, but essentially the way we looked at it was, Bitcoin is still an emerging store of value. It's not like gold where it's stable,
sure,
or somewhat stable. So, our thinking was we definitely need to have enough fiat on hand for any sort of short to medium term obligations, let's say. The nice thing with the SaaS business is, we have recurring revenue, and it's typically very stable. So it's very rare, or it actually has famous last words. It hasn't happened yet where we've seen this big drop in cash flow from 1 month to the next. So essentially we were like, let's get up to 50%. That should give us plenty of fiat for the short term or any sort of emergency situation. And then, like you said, we believe that in the long term, this Bitcoin will definitely hold its value and probably be worth a lot more money than it is now. And then sure enough, that has grown past 50% because the the price has been mooning over the last month, as I'm sure everyone following the space has realized. So it's a bit more than 50% now. Let's put it that way.
Sure. And how are you currently? Are you buying and self-custodying yourself, or are you going through a trust like Grayscale's trust? How's the dynamic there as far as you guys buying the Bitcoin and custodying it?
Yeah, so we're buying it on exchange, and then we're actually self-custodying it with via multisig.
Got it. Very interesting. And have you, since doing this and the news being made public, have other business owners approached you saying, "Hey, tell us about what you're doing here"?
Yeah, I got a couple DMs actually on Twitter saying like, "That's a boss move," and actually one guy was like, "That's a boss move. Unfortunately, we have investors, so I can't do that, but like, sure. I like it." And then I had a couple more people that were, "Oh, that's interesting," and kind of more around like, where are you buying it and like how are you custodying it, and what are the options for X, Y, and Z. So there were a handful of people that were interested in learning a bit more.
Got it. And is there a certain price point that you have a plan to cash out at to recoup? Well, not recoup, but to maybe add to your additional cash holdings? I know we just talked about the inflation, but are there price points you're looking to cash out on, or are you just holding it as a safe haven for now to see how things play out?
Well, it's interesting because like Bitcoin goes to $1 million or something like that. That probably means that it is on its way to becoming like a true reserve asset or global unit of account. So at that point, it's like, well, why am I going to sell good money for bad money, kind of thing?
Sure.
On the other hand, let's say we get this crazy bull run over the next 12 to 18 months, and it goes to something crazy like $500,000. It would be hard. It would be tempting not to, at least, because at that point, like, it would literally be 99% of the balance sheet, right? If that were to play, or whatever, 95, 90, 99%. So maybe we would trim a bit to get down to, let's say, 80-20 or at least 10-90. But we really look at the Bitcoin on our balance sheet as like, this is going to protect our purchasing power at a minimum.
Yeah.
Obviously, we think that it's going to go beyond that, but that's really the goal, right? Is to preserve the work that we've done, and for that work not to get devalued. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. We're not, we didn't buy it thinking like, okay, yeah, we think Bitcoin's for sure going to hit $100,000 in 12 months, and when it does, we're going to cash out, we're going to make money. Like, that's not how we're looking at it. Sure. But again, if it goes some crazy, moon parabolic 500K, maybe we'll trim a little bit. But we're definitely not trying to like trade around this or time cycles or anything like that. What we'd probably do is just stop buying more of it, and just, any additional cash flow, just keep it in cash to maintain some semblance of a normal allocation. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Sure, and that makes sense. You got to have working capital. And I'm assuming, let's say you guys have the opportunity to maybe acquire another company or do a big expansion, you may cash out some to grab that cash to actually put it to work, not just have it sit there, right? You'll have capital to actually put to work and invest in the business and that type of thing.
Yeah, that was another thing kind of forgot to mention, was like, the really interesting thing that we're thinking about is like, okay, let's say, our Bitcoin does 10x or whatever. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. And so, like you said, now we can look at that and say, okay, wow, is there something in the space that we want to acquire? Is there another kind of product line that we want to invest into? So it definitely gives us some more optionality. And in that way, I think that's a great way to use some of those funds, as opposed to just let me sell this for US dollars and keep that cash on the balance sheet, right? Like, right. Actually making a productive use of that capital.
Absolutely. Now, there's a question I want to ask you, and I know it's a bit open-ended right now because we're all kind of waiting for regulatory clarity, both in the United States, possibly in Canada as well. How in putting Bitcoin on your books, Was there any discussions you had to had with regulators, or is there anything that you guys are thinking of? Okay, what's going to happen? We think everything's going to go in the right direction here. We saw Brian Brooks in the United States this morning go on CNBC saying crypto regulations come to 6 to 8 weeks. Are you worried about anything along those lines, or you think we'll be okay? We have it on our books, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess upfront disclosure, we're a small company. Like, we're not a public company. We don't have a board of directors. Mark and I are 50-50 partners in the business. So based on, what we've seen, there wasn't anything that was indicating to us that we weren't able to do this. After talking with accountants and lawyers, they certainly didn't see any issue. In terms of tax treatment, is very clear. Put it on the balance sheet. If you sell at a gain, there's capital gains tax, and that's about it. So we, at least from our vantage point, we certainly didn't see anything that was worrisome. Let's call it. And in fact, a lot of there hasn't been too much stuff specifically coming out of Canada, but I mean, I've been following a lot of the stuff in the United States, and it seems like it's all good news from the regulatory front. I mean, Kraken got a banking license. Avanti Bank had approved for their charter. Rulings from, forget the abbreviation, I think it was the OSC that said, you're allowed to custody digital assets. So I haven't seen a single thing up to this point that gives me pause that, we're not going to, or, be allowed to do this, or there's going to be an issue. And one of the things that I think is so fascinating about Bitcoin is the game theory behind it, right? So, any country that tries to ban Bitcoin or come down on it is going to put themselves at a disadvantage. And for a relatively free society like Canada and the United States, I would be very surprised at this point if they came down on it, because I think the cat's out of the bag. The time to ban this thing was like 10 years ago. And the more, Michael Saylors and Squares that stack it on the balance sheet, and all the billionaires that are buying it up, it's just going to get like harder and harder to come down it from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And to what you just mentioned, the OCC, Brian Brooks, who heads it up
OCC,
here.
That's
it. He went on CNBC this morning saying we're not going to ban Bitcoin, and regulations coming 6 to 8 weeks. So everyone got excited by that news, and I was just curious, in Canada, if things were a bit different. But it seems, for the most part, all the countries that are free society are moving ahead, and I think even some of the ones that are not as much, they're still not banning Bitcoin. I think we're moving ahead, and it's going to grow as an asset class.
Yeah, I mean, I think even so, India, I think they flip-flopped. I think initially they were, I don't know if they were banning the exchanges or whatever, but I know they were kind of there's some harsh regulations to where that, and then they kind of flipped. And I think the Supreme Court actually came out saying that it was unconstitutional or whatever. And then, China has kind of flip-flopped a little bit too. So, I mean, I think the regulatory thing is, I'm more worried about regulation in the sense that, maybe they say, you need to disclose your wallet addresses if you're
Sure.
Taking off an exchange or something like that. But at this point, I mean, I just don't see a world where they say you can't own Bitcoin and you're going to jail if you do. I think that ship has sailed.
Absolutely. And before we shift gears to BitBo, I want to ask, with Snappa, any hints you can give to us maybe of things coming in 2021? Any announcements you want to make? I know there's probably things you can't get ahead of it too early, but wanted to ask anyway.
Yeah, we've actually been undergoing this like pretty massive refactor on the back end, and almost essentially redoing the source code and whatnot. So that's kind of the big thing that we're working on right now. And that should come out sometime in 2021. It's always hard to give dates with software, but that's going to make the software just much faster, and a couple of features that we're going to launch alongside of that. So there'll definitely be a nice facelift and some cool stuff coming in 2021.
Awesome. That's exciting. Now, I didn't know about BitBo, but when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I was like, hey, what's BitBo, right? And it's something. It's a Bitcoin dashboard that you guys are building. Can you give us an overview of that?
Yeah, so BitBo right now is essentially a Bitcoin dashboard, and essentially we kind of were wanting to scratch our own itch in the sense that we wanted something almost like a Bloomberg terminal for the Bitcoin network, right? And hat tip to Clark Moody in the space, who had kind of created something like this as well. But we wanted to put our own spin on it. And then the other thing too was that where we're kind of going with this is right now we've got this one page dashboard where you have all of these stats in real time, but we also want to start then taking it a step further and start tracking historical charts and historical data, because one of the things we found was that either these sites are kind of looking at like the 6,000 cryptos that are out there, and it just gets like so convoluted and messy if you're just kind of trying to concentrate on one of the networks. And then the other thing was related to Bitcoin, we found that there was like one site that tracked this, one site that tracked that, one site that tracked that. So essentially what we kind of wanted to do was have this really succinct one-page dashboard that gives you everything that you need to know about the Bitcoin network, and then slowly start to add on, like historical charts, indicators, and all of various tools that we can build out over time, so that you don't need to go to like 5, 6, 7 different websites to kind of track some of this stuff.
Got it. Very interesting. And is it a free service to use where folks can go sign up, download it? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's completely free. No plans to monetize or charge anything like that. So yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, they can go to bitbo.io. It's mobile responsive, which is another kind of thing too that we really focused on. So you can actually save it to your phone's home screen, so it functions like a native mobile app as well. And we just wanted to give a really nice user experience to people that want to see what's going on with the Bitcoin network.
Very cool. I'm definitely going to have to check that out after this. And everyone, I'll put a link in the description to check it out. So I'm going to put you on a spot. Do you have a price prediction for Bitcoin maybe for next year and 5 years from now?
So I don't really have price predictions in terms of like distinct time frames. Where I come from right now is I think it's pretty inevitable at this point that Bitcoin makes a run for gold's market cap, which would, we're talking in the range of $500,000-$600,000. And so I don't know if we'll see that play out in this current cycle, but I think I can definitely see that happening within the next cycle at least. So 5-year price point, we'll call it 500K.
Awesome. I did want to ask about, central bank digital currencies, hot topic now with all the governments and central banks, of course. And I personally feel it's beneficial for the crypto market and Bitcoin, just because we're moving to the digital economy. The governments are going to educate people about blockchain now and even further validate Bitcoin and crypto. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing in Canada from a CBDC standpoint?
Yeah, the articles that I've seen from Canada, at least, is very exploratory. I would say I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that at least the Bank of Canada is going to come out with a digital currency anytime soon. Like, I think they're looking at it, they're exploring at it, but governments are pretty slow moving too. So I don't have a lot of faith that they're gonna come out with one anytime soon. It's an interesting topic because it's funny because people that don't understand Bitcoin, they're like, oh, well, governments are going to come out with their own digital currencies and that's going to kill Bitcoin. Well, no, because they're not going to come out with a digital currency with a fixed supply that's completely decentralized that they can't, confiscate and whatnot. So kind of like you alluded to, it could almost encourage more adoption to Bitcoin, where if you all of a sudden have, your Fed coin or whatever central bank digital currency and you start getting more familiar with how to use it, whatever. And then all of a sudden you see this Bitcoin thing that keeps going up in value relative to what you're holding. And so I think the natural reaction is going to be, well, why don't I just buy Bitcoin? Why am I using this digital currency?
Right.
And then you layer on all the privacy concerns, which is what worries me the most about, central bank digital currencies. So, obviously, definitely not going to be a threat to Bitcoin. If anything, it could almost be an accelerant. I'm not as convinced as others that there's going to be these central bank digital currencies, at least not within the next, year or 2 or 3, maybe 5 years potentially. But I mean, I've worked in the government, and I know how slow moving it is at times.
Sure.
So I would be very skeptical, or I would be very surprised to see a central bank digital currency within, the next three years, maybe even 5 years. I would be surprised, but we'll see. I could be proven wrong.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, and they put out different statements. Well, China's ahead of everybody, and we need to stay competitive. Well, at least here in the United States, and some countries like, oh, we're looking at it, so it's hard to tell. But I certainly within the next 5-year window, because it's going to be a big rollout, and you're not going to get rid of cash overnight, right?
Because I think even Powell's last remarks were like, we'll look at it, but we need to be prudent, and just his. I guess his remarks again made it seem like they're not going to rush into this, right? So we're I think conservatively maybe like a 3 to 5 year time window, but I'd be very surprised if there's anything substantial within the next few years.
For sure. So I want to ask, you mentioned earlier, obviously you have holdings in Bitcoin personally, and you mentioned you did grab some Ethereum. Are there other projects or tokens, digital assets, or whatever you want to call them, that you're looking into now that you may add in the future or thinking of?
Yeah. So full disclosure, I did end up converting all my ETH to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's the only thing I own. So the way that I'm looking at the space right now is that Bitcoin to me has a very clear, well-defined use case, and that I understand very well, and therefore I'm very comfortable putting a lot of capital behind that, because one thing I've learned with investing is that all of my best investments have been the ones that I understood really well and I had the conviction to hold for a long time. All of my bad investments were the ones that I didn't understand and probably didn't have as much conviction. And so over the years, I've kind of gravitated more towards putting more money in things that I'm really confident and understand very well, and less to stuff that I don't understand really well. The biggest problem that I have with a lot of these other cryptocurrencies is that I feel like a lot of them aren't actually solving a real problem, right? So like I said, Bitcoin's solving a very big problem, and I think it's also very easy to value that, right? So again, like if it becomes a really good store of value, you look at gold market cap, here's what the price of Bitcoin would be. If it becomes the next, global reserve currency and a global unit of count, let's look at the base money and maybe some of the monetary premium embedded in real estate or even in the stock market. And now you're talking, 5 to 10 million a coin. With something like Ethereum, it's really difficult for me to value, so you have to get around, okay, what is the narrative at the time? Because I find the narrative behind Ethereum changes a little bit. And then the other thing too is like, okay, if Ethereum plays out and it does become this, decentralized platform that everyone's building upon, what is that worth, right? How do I value that? And is that going to come to fruition? And I don't know, right? I'm not an expert. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now is like, I understand Bitcoin really well. I have the conviction. I'm going to put all my money behind that. And for me as an entrepreneur, I don't have, there's only so much time I can dedicate to learning about 6,000 coins. Right. And that's the problem that I face. Like a lot of my stock investments, the ones that have done really well, I found out about them through what I do for work. Right. Sure. I don't spend 8 hours a day in front of a Bloomberg terminal running screeners and all that kind of stuff. I hear about things or I use a product myself. I understand the use case and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I'm coming from it. Like I'm okay with missing out on, some juicy returns from other cryptocurrencies. But we'll see. That's just kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think for sure, Bitcoin is certainly a solid hold. If you were to just to pick one in the crypto market, right? Definitely Bitcoin. So I think we certainly agree there. And it has the branding, it has the awareness, it has the reach, it has the store value. One of the biggest use cases, of course. And all the institutional investors are trying to grab as much as they can now. So
and I think so. And I think just one of the other concerns I have with some of the other cryptocurrencies too. And again, like I said, I haven't put anywhere near the amount of time researching some of these other ones as Bitcoin. But a lot of them seem to be very centralized. And it's, it would concern me to put a lot of money into something that seems to have a lot of control from either, the founding members or that kind of stuff, where Bitcoin, I don't need to worry about, getting dumped on by, by some of the people that, either pre-mined or whatever, or getting shut down, right? I mean, you're not going to shut down at Bitcoin at this point. So it just all comes back to, I just have a much higher degree of confidence in Bitcoin and the conviction to hold, whereas I haven't done, enough work on some of these other ones for me to feel confident putting a bunch of money into it.
Got it. And that totally makes sense given, your position, and certainly respect that what you've done with your business and the fact that you've taken that bet on Bitcoin with your business, not just personally. Mm-hmm. So final question, quick rapid fire questions. What's your favorite food?
Definitely sushi.
Sushi, awesome.
Went to Japan. We're actually, thankfully, we were in Japan last October before all the lockdown stuff happened, and it was amazing.
Very cool. What's your favorite, or who's your favorite musician or band?
All time, probably Notorious B.I.G. I'm a big hip hop guy. Nice. If we're talking current times, I think Drake has been consistently good for the past, and he's from Canada too, so I got to shout out.
I was about to say typical Canadian answer. No, I'm just kidding. Favorite movie?
I would say either Catch Me If You Can or The Pursuit of Happiness.
Nice. And when you're not working at Snappa or building BitBo, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
Traveling, do a lot of reading. Taking my dog for a walk with my fiance. Going for nice walks. That's always fun.
Cool. Chris, pleasure chatting with you. Learned so much about Snappa and what you guys are doing with Bitcoin. Very cool, and hope to speak to you as the Bitcoin maybe hits $100,000 and we'll have another conversation.
Sounds good. I'd look forward to that.
Thank you, Chris.